be starting. Yeah, we're good. All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Bits and Bytes podcast. I'm your host, Nick, and today I'm privileged to have guest speaker Seth Penner with us today, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his perspectives in the IT industry. Hello, Seth. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, pleasure to have you. So before we get real deep into the topics of IT here, I was just wondering, what got you into your career path? I know you're a software developer, but what
Mhm.
inspired you to do that?
Well, I think I'd have to go back to when I was pretty young, probably around 12, 13 or so, and I was starting to play a lot of online games. Specifically, I played games like Rome Total War. I played a lot of Civilization 3 and 4 specifically. And from there, I got really into the modding scene, actually, for Civ 4. So I was kind of making my own mods, editing XML files, and kind of trying to learn a little bit of C++ and stuff to try to make some more fancy features into my little mods. And from there, I found that I really enjoyed I wanted to work with computers in some way, but I hadn't really quite figured out what exactly that meant, whether that was, building hardware, like building new systems or doing networking stuff or programming. Um, and then fast forward a few years, I took up a game called Android Netrunner, which was this competitive card game I was playing. And I met a lot of guys here in Winnipeg that had gone through the BIT program. And I was saying, like, oh, I'm not really sure exactly how I want to approach this. And they were like, go take the Red River BIT program, and that'll set you probably on the path that you're looking for. So I took their advice, um, and I joined the BIT program, and the rest is kind of history from there. Um, if you want, I can get into like the actual career part of it if you want, or
Yeah, we can go into that, but I actually want to step back just a little bit and
sure.
talk about what were some transferable skills from your previous employers that apply
Mm,
to you after bit.
mm,
So obviously, I'm guessing you probably weren't working, at because I saw you were working at the government of Manitoba for a little while as
mhm.
a software dev.
Yep,
So tell us a little bit about your previous experience and how that experience applies to you today.
sure. So most of the experience that I have, at least as far as the workforce kind of goes, I pretty much just worked kind of for a local farm in my area, got enough money, went into the BIT program, and then working for the government was part of the co-op that I took in my kind of late terms of the BIT program. Yeah, I got hired there at the government, and we were working on a specific student project for the government that was cataloging a lot of their infrastructure, server infrastructure across kind of Manitoba. And so it was a application that we were writing in C Sharp. We were doing it in MVC, and yeah, I was working with one other guy who was also a bit student at the time, and he was a little bit ahead of me. I worked there for about 8 months until the co-op ended. Um, yeah, it was a really good gateway for me to kind of learn a lot of the core skills that I took into kind of the further jobs that I got, specifically things like learning how to use Git and Git flow and a lot more C sharp development and better kind of design patterns and trying to build systems for scalability and just try to make things a little bit better because student code can be a little tangly at times. So just trying to disentangle that and leave it better for the next student that would come in.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. The one thing that I found, like, now that I'm in term three, is I wish in programming one they would have taught us about design patterns and have done that system design, you
Yep.
know, uh, methodology in the beginning, so you have that
Hmm.
solid groundwork. Because
Yep.
now it's like, well, I'm a term three student, and yeah, we're learning this now, which is great, but I'm just like, man, I feel like I would have the upper hand now,
Hmm.
So
Yeah. I think if I were to look back and say what was the most valuable thing from the bit program that I actually wish I had spent more time on, it was probably uh, system design, the design patterns, and just learning how to architect systems. I think that and how to like structure your code in these healthy, clean ways would have really benefited more if I had tried maybe a bit the program had been a little bit better structured towards emphasizing those kinds of things. But yeah.
No, 100%. No, that's awesome. Thank you for that.
Hmm.
Uh, Next thing I want to kind of touch on, like, what is your preferred programming language or your programming suite?
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. So around, I'm a little bit biased because of how the bit program kind of introduced certain languages to me, but I think um, I primarily work in C sharp. As far as backend technology, I primarily work in C sharp. From a front end perspective, I'm typically working in things like React, TypeScript, those types of things. I have some experience with Ruby on Rails. I have some experience with Java. I have kind of a mix of a whole bunch of different backend frameworks. Um, yeah, and then on the JavaScript side, it's primarily React. So I would say probably C sharp and React are my favorites as far as languages that I use frequently.
so I'm going to follow up on that a little
Hmm.
bit with we're learning a lot of PHP right now.
Mm,
And, going out into the industry, I've been hearing that's like, oh, you're going to be mainly using,
yep.
JS and React
Hmm.
and even Ruby on Rails for some instances.
Yep.
But I just feel like we're kind of like a little bit behind now with
Mm,
the whole PHP thing.
yep.
With your experience now, is PHP even relevant anymore? Or,
The tricky thing with that is it depends on the company. So certain companies are very tied to different tech stacks. For example, if you end up trying to interview into, say, Bold, big employer here in Winnipeg, they primarily work in PHP as far as their backend stuff. I think on the front end they're using React. But the reason that they're using things like PHP is mostly because they are a primarily e-commerce company. And so the e-commerce industry is very tied to things like PHP and Ruby on Rails. You'll pretty much see almost no C sharp in that industry as far as like that little subsection. Um, so if it's something that you kind of know ahead of time of like kind of which subsection of the info like IT sort of world that you want to get into, PHP can be a good choice. But I do find that that language is not nearly as popular as it used to be, and C sharp is definitely on the rise as far as more applications, more companies embracing it. So, yeah, PHP is a bit it's a bit of a joke in certain circles as well. There's a very famous error in PHP that a lot of people know about. It's written in Hebrew, which is quite hilarious, and it's apparently a fairly common error that people get. It has to do with some weird syntax thing on the templating for the front end. It's it was pretty funny. Just if you ever look up very famous errors as far as like PHP is concerned, you'll find it pretty quick.
I'll have to take a look into that. I'll actually link that to the video as well
Yeah,
once we post it.
for sure.
Um, oh, that's cool. Now this might be going a little bit into the future here, but
Hmm.
with AI technology such as Chat GPT and it's fully capable of producing its own code,
Hmm.
um, do you see that taking away jobs in the future for, prospective job seekers like myself
Mm,
and my colleagues at Red River? Is
mm,
it something that scares you, or what are some of
mm.
your bigger fears with AI?
So in the realm of programming and code sort of generation sort of aspect, I see it not as a threat. I see it as a very powerful tool that will give us a lot of advantage in certain monotonous tasks that developers end up doing. A lot of boilerplate code can very easily be automated away and is constantly being automated away via different libraries that people use, new code gen sort of things. Like on the C sharp side, you have Roslyn analyzers, which take code and can generate code based off of templates and do a lot of this kind of auto generation. New libraries are constantly trying to find ways to cut down boilerplate. Chat GPT, from what I can see, will not replace what most developers end up doing in their day to day. It will definitely make certain tasks far easier. A good example of this that some of my team members and I tried out that was quite cool was with the new release of ChatGPT. You're able to take an image and you can actually ask it to take a mock-up of a website, let's say you just made an image, and you can actually have it generate the HTML code in order to produce that exact look, which was very impressive, I have to say.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was very cool. So from a sort of being able to template out examples, being able to build out boilerplate code and kind of do certain monotonous things, like if you ask it, make me a function that can determine if a number is even or odd, right? Very easy for it to do. It's a pain in the ass if you ever would have to write it. You never will because libraries already exist to do all of these things for you. But if you ever needed to write some of that more easily explained code, ChatGPT is a great tool for that. So I see it as a co-pilot, not as the actual person flying the plane. And if we're going to take it outside of the realm of code, the way I do find AI being a bit concerning is in the areas of deep fakes and changing people's sort of producing this very difficult to combat misinformation. I see that as a real threat.
100% on the specifically like on the political front as well. I mean, you can
Hmm.
see some of the AI technology. I actually
Yep.
tried one. Can't remember what it's called, voice mod or whatever, but you can,
Yep.
impersonate presidents or people of power and
People
even
love that one.
celebrities.
Yep.
Yeah. But I've also been hearing too that like in the music industry, there's AI technology where I mean, for the
Yep.
past, 2 decades already, you've been able to produce, just consistent beats, FL
Mm,
Studio, that sort of thing. So like
yep.
rhythmic technology is not new, but AI
Yep.
generating rhythmic technology with melodies and lyrics,
Yeah.
and then also being able to impersonate, uh, celebrities, singers.
Yep.
It's like
Hmm.
we don't need actual people to produce music anymore, right? And
Yeah.
you know, I guess it's going to affect different industries differently, but
Yep. Absolutely.
no.
And for example, like the impersonation ones you mentioned, like it's been a current trend that I've seen all over the internet is just creating people like Biden and Trump and whoever and turning them into like a Discord call where they're playing games or whatever, like playing Minecraft, for example. It's absolutely hilarious, but at the same time, it's absolutely terrifying of how close it is to their real sounding voices. It's truly impressive.
It goes back to that thing though where it's uncanny valley where we know it isn't
Hmm.
real, but it's
Yep,
so dang close that it's
it's
like,
so close.
oh,
Yep.
man, like you'd think they might be able to say it, but you watch videos on like how they actually speak, and it's like no,
Yep.
they still have
s-
like their
Yeah.
their things that make them.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. There's mannerisms and things that can't, and inflections in their voice that it just doesn't quite capture. Um, Another area that's quite interesting that a lot of uproar has been kind of generated over is AI art generation. A lot of people are very against AR generation, and some people are very for it as a new way of creative expression. Um, I think the point where that becomes a problem in my mind is when it is being trained on images that people did not give their consent to be trained on. For example, I think it was it Tumblr or there was a site that has a lot of image generation. They were rolling out an AI art tool and they were having everyone automatically opt in to providing the images to it. You had to opt out of it in order to not have your images be scraped for its training, which I thought was a huge ethical problem, just
yeah, that's
straight up.
super sketchy.
Yeah, super sketchy. Everybody freaked out, was like, this is not okay. So there's there's frontiers where I think AI is definitely going to take over people's jobs. And code, if you are just coming in and writing very generic, very basic code that pretty much anyone could write, you're probably going to get replaced by an AI at some point. What developers and programmers should aspire to be and will not be easily replaced is people who can think at that higher level, at that business level, and be able to architect these grander systems that an AI cannot do yet.
No, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Mhm.
It's I'm still 2 terms away. I'm gonna be taking my co-op probably in uh it'd be the equivalent of term 5. So I'm taking my term
Mhm.
5
Yep.
courses like after term 3, and then I'll do my term 4 co-op afterwards.
Oh, okay.
But
Interesting.
that's just one of the bigger fears that I have is I'm like, well, I'll be done by next year, but am I going to be replaced by then?
Yeah.
So
I think I can pretty safely, despite how fast things are moving, I think you'll be fine.
I got to just step up my A game.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Like those design patterns and things that we talked about already, those are key skills that an AI just is not good at doing.
Hmm.
You still have to be able to tell the AI what you want it to do at the end of the day. So if you can describe the system and if you can build the higher level sort of concepts in conjunction with an AI, you're going to be fine.
Oh, that's awesome. Um, yeah. Other than that, I don't have any other questions for you today. But
Mhm.
was there anything else you wanted to, give our viewers maybe a bit of advice on how they can keep up on, upcoming trends in the industry?
Mm.
Just some general advice for us.
Mhm. So a couple of things that I've thought about on the kind of like I think some certain things are really important for developers to have as skill sets. And surprise, surprise, they're not often the technical ones. They're the interpersonal ones. I find that those are truly the ones that will take you far in this industry. The better you are communicating things like very complex topics and trying to adapt them to different audiences and different sort of stakeholders, that is incredibly valuable and companies will absolutely promote you for that sort of thing and will absolutely hire you for having those types of skills. And just having this deep desire to learn new things is going to take you so far in this kind of industry that's evolving constantly. Nothing ever stays the same. And if you're ever a front end dev, you're basically learning a new language every week. It's the frameworks that keep coming out for things like React, things like JavaScript. It's a constantly spinning sort of industry. It's always changing, it's always adapting. So if you can be receptive to that and good at kind of keeping up with that, you're going to do really well. And one of the ways to do that, there's a couple of different ways. One thing, a lot of companies end up having community of practice type groups. So these are groups of people in sort of, say, a bunch of React experts. They'll kind of get together and then they'll kind of share information like, oh, look at this cool new library I found. Let me do a little talk on it. Or these best practices that we found, we'll share it with you. So these groups can be very helpful in building your skills and learning new things. There are local meetup groups that you can talk to kind of get kind of a pulse of what's going on in the industry sort of thing. There's a bunch here locally in Winnipeg. I don't personally go to any of those types of things, but for some people, those are great places to go and network and meet new people. There are a lot of really great conferences that exist that can kind of give you a bunch of really good talks on different sort of bigger ideas, architecture frameworks, and how to construct certain systems and do that kind of stuff. Specifically, I really like any talks done by NDC. They do really good stuff, and they have a YouTube channel where you can watch all of their talks for free, which is great. There are podcasts for different areas of coding. There are, say, UX engineering type stuff. I don't listen to any of those podcasts, but one really good one for front end React type stuff is Syntax. They're a really good podcast that I highly recommend. Then there's also things like newsletters if you want to subscribe to those to get kind of the ideas of new things happening in different sort of language areas like React. Um, yeah, there's lots of ways to get the information. It's just you have to go out and find it to some extent.
Just Google it.
Just Google it. Exactly.
Yeah.
I saved you a Google. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Seth, for joining us on the show. This is the Bits and Bytes podcast. And yeah, I hope you have yourself a great evening.
Thank you. You too.
Awesome. Take care, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and please like and subscribe. Until next time. Right. That's it.
Cool.
uh,
Good. Good.